welcome to the first episode of Two Dumb DMs, a podcast with two dumb DMs.
I think you already know. Actually, most people don't know us.
No, nobody's gonna know us yet.
I don't know. Some people might know us.
Maybe.
Like, if we share this with our players or our friends. Even then, I think half my friends... Oh, actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm pretty sure all my friends know that I play D&D.
Yeah, but do all of your friends know you?
No.
I didn't think so.
Makes me kind of sad.
That's really funny. Anyway, moving on.
Okay, well, so who are you? Who are you and why am I in your house?
Well, I'm going to answer those questions in reverse order. You're in my house because I kidnapped you and locked you in my basement. And my name...
Well, then why are we recording a podcast again?
Because it's always been your lifelong dream.
You just, like, pick me up from my house, and we're like, hey, first you're going to sit in the basement for a sec, and then we're going to record a podcast together, because I know it's been your dream.
You're the one that wanted to record the podcast.
That's fair. I asked you while you were kidnapping me. I had, like, the bag over my head, and I was like, whoever this is, can you, like... Well, the thing is, like, why did
I've always wanted to record a podcast.
Why did you have... Well, of all people... Why did you have to, like...
problem there.
Well, why did you kidnap me? You literally could have just, like, walked over to my house, been like, Kyle, let's go. And I would have gone. And you didn't have to, like, kidnap me, per se. Okay, that's off topic.
Okay, anyway.
So, like, who are you?
My name's Jaden. And this is
Wow,
my friend
what a surprise.
Kyle.
I can introduce myself.
I already introduced you.
I'm
You're Kyle.
Dang it.
I win.
Dang it.
And we're recording a Dungeons and Dragons podcast because we're bored.
Yeah, it's not a play one because we don't have enough mics or enough money.
Maybe someday.
I doubt it, considering that I'm spending $600 on a cornet. So
I have one mic that could probably pick everybody up just fine.
That's fair. Okay, well, so yeah, this is... It's not a real play. Do we call it a Real Talk D&D podcast?
I don't know.
Well, we're calling it a Real Talk D&D podcast now. Okay, so in the D&D world, there's news. There's
news in every world, Kyle. Not specifically.
So, there's some news. So,
for example, I can pull up other...
Jaden, I don't need you to pull up news.
No, it's fine. Keep going.
Okay, well, so... D&D
Ooh, did
Live...
you hear that Netflix revealed the cast for the live-action Avatar The Last Airbender series?
I thought they already made a live-action Avatar The Last Airbender.
They made a movie and it was awful.
Yeah,
nobody liked it. So they're making a live-action TV series.
That's
and
gonna
it's actually hopefully going to be good.
That's going to end well. Okay, well, that's not the news we're talking about. We're talking about this news. So, at D&D Live in August, I don't remember what day it was because it was a long time ago.
It was yesterday.
It was not. Oh, no, actually, it was in July. Whoop. Well, so they announced 3 new things. First of which being Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is a campaign/sourcebook based entirely in the Feywild, and they are saying it's going to release on the 21st of September this year, 2021.
It's actually pretty quick.
I would hope, yeah.
Do they normally release that quick?
Yeah. Well, they've been working on this thing for the past, 3 years.
Oh.
So, Candlekeep was in for, 5 years.
Okay.
That was the biggest book. So, yeah, this is... Chris Perkins really wanted to extrapolate on the idea of the Feywild because no other books had ever done it before. And so they kind of went crazy on this campaign sourcebook and all of that jazz, having fun with it. They actually have 2... Something interesting that they did with this
is Five
book.
Kingdoms by Brandon Mull set in the Feywilds.
Ooh! That's not a bad campaign idea. I like that. We'll have to do that.
I'm smart. This is why I'm the less dumb of the two
Oh,
dumb
yeah,
DMs.
Totally. So, they actually did something really cool with this where they created 2 adventure hooks. One being, the traditional one, where, you start off as the adult, and the second being where you went to the Feywild Carnival and had something stolen from you.
Ooh.
So, they have 2 different adventure hooks. So that's Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Again, that's coming out on the 21st of September of 2021.
Or so they say.
It's coming out there. It's not going to come out later or earlier.
Might do.
Second thing they came out with, or they announced, was Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos. So.
Oh, that just sounds like school again.
Well, because it literally is.
I finally caught the word curriculum, and I'm like.
It's just Harry Potter.
I don't want to do that.
It's just Harry Potter in D&D. So, it's the same kind of thing that they did with Theros, where it was originally a Magic the Gathering set, which was Strixhaven, and then they adapted it into a D&D source book. So it's
Strixhaven.
Yeah, Strixhaven was the...
Same name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's essentially just Harry Potter. I hope all of you know what Harry Potter is. If you don't know what Harry Potter is, then go get edumacated, you uncultured swine.
Mm.
And then the last thing...
Harry Potter is overrated.
Are you kidding me?
It's
I've read
good.
It's good.
But it's not
there
that
are actually
good.
better
It's not
books,
that
I will
good.
admit, but it's still pretty good. So, and then the last thing they announced was Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which is, if any of you know what Volo's Guide to Monsters is, it's just that, but all dragons. So adding a bunch of...
It's just a book full of dragons and dragon stat blocks.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of, like, Dragonborn stuff.
And that's it.
So, actually, that sounds kind of fun.
I'm hoping it's good.
Because then it'd be you can just play with lots of
Can
dragons.
I play as Tiamat?
A
Tiamat Dragonborn?
You just have 5 heads.
No, you just have, like, rainbow scales. You'd be gay.
Dang it, you beat me to it. So yeah, that's all that's happening in the D&D world.
That's literally everything that's happening in the D&D world. Yep.
Well, besides
nothing else.
Books that they're still working on.
Literally nothing else
yeah.
is going on in the Dungeons
Absolutely
and Dragons
nothing
universe.
else. You know, Seattle, the headquarters, no one ever goes there anymore.
Nobody should. It's actually a rundown old warehouse now. They
That would
store
make me-
rotting fish.
That would be really sad.
That would
Because that was like one of the coolest places on Earth.
I want to go.
I do want to go, actually. They have like a dragon in the freaking welcome
The
area.
foyer.
Yeah,
The
it's...
foyer.
Foyer.
Foyer if you're European.
Well, it's... Okay. Whatever. Why? Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's... I don't have anything else. Should we get on to our first section?
Sure.
Okay.
Ding!
We'll be back.
Right now.
Ha! Got you.
Shut up.
We have control over time because this is a podcast.
Exactly.
Okay, well, this is a section
I'm just a
where...
chrono wizard.
No. You're a DM. Meaning you still have power over TM.
Whatever I want.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So this is a section where we talk about a bunch of house rules. Your sipping is showing up on the mic.
Good, that was my plan.
So, house rules. Everyone's
House always wins.
got... What?
The house always wins.
That's in blackjack. But
That's in any form of gambling. And I would include Dungeons and Dragons under gambling.
yeah, that's only if you're playing 3 Dragon Ante. It's a tavern game, you little sucker. I guess Dragon Chess
It's
counts.
still gambling.
Same with
You
dice.
literally are rolling dice to decide your fate.
Well, that's not what these house rules are. These are house rules for the DMs to use. You little... You... I think he just died. Oh, wait, no.
We should learn how to curse like dwarves. That would be fun. Anyway, continue.
So... You just completely derailed my train of thought.
Good.
This
It's
is-
on your list.
I know,
Read it off
I'm
the
trying
list.
to think of how to, like,
House rules.
reincorporate
Read the
this.
first
So it's
one.
house rules. Okay. So we have 4 house rules that we already came up with that we
personally like to use.
Yeah, we like to use, and then we're gonna start coming up with some more, just with like some. I'm doing massive air quotes here. Controversial things in D&D. So
things that not everybody agrees with out of like the player's handbook
Yeah.
or something. So ways that you
But-
can tweak it to make it a little bit more fun or personalized.
Yeah, so we'll get to those eventually. But the first house rule we use is death saves. So you can do death save. Most people do death saves as like the player that's dying
We'll
is
roll
rolling
the
them.
D20.
So the death saves. Just gonna explain this in case any of you don't know it, but I hope you. Not throwing any judge or anything, Jaden.
Hey,
but
I've never judged anybody in my entire life.
Jaden, I don't think you know what death saves are.
I know what death saves are.
Okay, fine.
When you
So,
roll a D4,
yeah,
and if you
it's
roll
not
a
a
1, you
D4.
die. No, you
Hope
roll
your
a,
dice aren't balanced wrong.
You roll a D20, and 10 and up is a success. A natural 20 is an instant success.
Yeah, it stabilizes you to
Yeah,
one hit point.
stabilized.
Natural
and then
1 is 2
natural 1
failures.
is 2 fails.
As soon as you get 3 successes, you're stabilized. As soon as you get 3 fails.
You're dead. Your
you're
character's
dead.
gone forever.
So a lot of people have the players that are currently dying roll them, but a lot
But
of
they're dying.
DMs, preferably me, since I run more of like a dark fantasy, realistic sort of campaign, I actually like to go and do the death saves myself behind the screen.
So that they don't know.
So they don't know.
And there's more.
So there's like more
anxiety.
urgency and anxieties, because like sometimes I've seen the players do like this massive unintentional metagame, where they're like, "Oh, don't worry, guys, I have 2 successes. You don't need to heal me." Whereas if you're behind the screen
you don't
and
know.
you roll once and then you just stare at them blankly and say, "Your turn," then they have no idea what's happening and they might potentially blow a spell slot. Who knows?
And hey, going along with death saves, I like to have the characters recall a memory every time they fail a save.
That's actually a cool idea. So it's like flashing through their life.
Exactly, it's like
So
the life flashing before your eyes.
Haha.
And they get to make up their own memory. So I don't. That's more fun for the character.
It gives the players more freedom to choose.
And
what they want.
if you decide to roll those death saves like behind the screen, you can just have them recall a memory whenever the heck you want to.
It's true. Well, okay, that's a nice house rule.
I like that one.
I'll probably use that even more. Okay, Jaden, what's our next house rule?
The D12 random encounter.
Yeah,
so
this is a fun one.
How this one works is like during a long rest or a short rest or something, when normally you'd roll a D20 to determine a random encounter, you have one player at your table roll a D12, and the DM also rolls a D12, and if those 2 numbers match, you have an encounter.
Yeah, and so you'll use like different numbers of D12s that each of you roll depending on
how long the rest is.
So like I think for short rest it was 1, and then for long rest it was 2 or 3, depending on how long the long rest was. So it gives, instead of like having the D20, I'm not exactly sure what this does, except for just kind of give the players a little bit more stuff to do while you're trying to get random encounters sorted out. But it also makes random encounters less common, meaning it's a little bit more realistic, because you don't always just walk up into the forest and then find a goblin just standing there.
Hey, you might.
You might. That's why there's the chance. There's like, I think it's a 1 in 144 chance.
I think that's what it is. If you're each rolling a D12, that's what it would be.
So yeah, it's not a super big chance, but it gives it like this nice, it gives a nice little change of pace.
It's
sometimes.
common enough that it will happen.
Yeah, but not so common that it will just happen uncontrollably.
And hey, if you want your encounters to be a little more common, you can do like roll D10s or even like D6s or something.
Or even you could roll multiple D12s while the other player rolls 1.
That too.
So then there's more chances.
So you just have lots of variability in your random encounter
instead of just having the 120,
a single D20.
So that's also a really nice one. So those are 2 really good ones. Now here's one that you only want to use if you're running like a dark fantasy realistic kind of game. Where it's a more realistic rest. So what a lot of people do is they take this kind of heroic fantasy, where most D&D games are you get hit and then the next day you get up and you go do the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's
with no signs of the previous conflict.
It's very much like movie style versus in real life. If you got cut by a sword, you wouldn't be up for like a week or so.
Which of course playing that way can be fun, but it all depends on the setting for your campaign.
Yeah. So what I like to do, with my players, I run a very realistic campaign where, like, this is uncommon, but I do variant encumbrance, and I do all of these things that create a more realistic game. So what I do, instead of doing I think it's 4 hours minimum for a short rest, is I think
it's 2, actually.
It's some short amount. I do a day of short rest. So you have to spend an entire day to get a short rest benefits, or like the 8 hours for a long rest is what I mean by a day. So you spend that 8 hour, what normally is a long rest is actually a short rest for my players. So they spend that and then they can get their benefits from the short rest. And then the long rest, you can take this to however long you want. You can go from like a week to a month, which is probably not a good idea.
Well, again, it all depends on the setting of the campaign. Yeah, it depends on what you're playing.
So I personally use 3 days so that it kind of creates like this little balance of like, yes, we have to spend time recuperating, but we don't have to spend so much time that it just derails the campaign.
Yeah.
So it's honestly just up to personal preference.
And that is made more like impactful on your campaign if you set like time limits and stuff. Yeah. Like you have to beat the bad guy in 2 weeks' time or else everybody dies. Suddenly long rests become a much bigger deal.
Yeah, and then it doesn't it also kind of fixes your problem of people short resting in caverns.
Yeah.
Because then they would have to spend an entire day or longer just sitting there doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Where something is bound to come up and encounter them. So it creates like this sense of urgency, and it makes them feel more like, I don't want to get hurt, so we're not going to do this encounter right now.
Yeah.
So it creates like different encounters instead of mainly combat.
Well, assuming
it's also like social encounters.
Assuming that you can do it right. If you just implement this and then don't change the rest of the campaign, like don't change a time limit or add any urgency or anything, then it feels like you're playing exactly the same way.
Yeah. You can make this into a dark fantasy or you can make it into a heroic fantasy. It's however you play it. And then we have one more house rule that we use.
Crosstalk.
So this is a fun one.
Crosstalk is something I'm very passionate about. I despise crosstalk.
In our campaign.
It is very annoying when you are trying to DM an encounter and explain to your players what's going on, and they're just sitting there talking about, like, whatever they had for lunch. It's very annoying. Or sometimes they'll even use it for metagaming, where characters will talk to each other across the table when their characters are, like, 3 miles apart. That shouldn't work.
Yeah. So I feel like, I don't know, taking this to, like, an extreme extent maybe is not a great idea because, like, people play D&D not just to play, like, this fantasy game. But to enjoy each other's...
Yeah.
But you also don't want to have them metagaming because of this. So maybe one thing to do is say, while you're in 2 different... Like, so, for example, like, you're crawling through a dungeon and for some reason, some stupid reason, they decide to split the party. So they're going 2 different directions. You don't want them conversing with each other like, oh, over here we found the main objective item, so you don't need to keep on exploring down this way.
Unless they have a way to communicate
unless they have, like, sending stones or a spell. You don't want to let them have crosstalks. Like, the 2 people that went to the left and the 2 people that went to the right, those 2 can talk to each other, but there's no crosstalk.
They can't even communicate with the other group.
Yeah, if you have good players, then they should understand this and be able to not metagame, but, like, newer players don't understand the concept.
It's really hard for new players, because they just want to talk about everything, because they're still trying to figure everything out.
So, like, they want to know what's happening in that other place to try and influence what they're doing there. But it's hard to realize, like, that's not... You have to put yourself into the character that's playing in the world and realize you are not in 2 places at one time.
Exactly. Another thing that kind of goes on with that is, like, metagaming and using information that's given to one character when your character doesn't have that information.
Yeah. So, like, say one character goes into the library and discovers something about, like, the BBEG, but decides to not share it for whatever reason, not share it with the rest of the party. The rest of the party doesn't know. Even though they were, like, physically in the space listening to it happen,
they don't know.
They don't know.
Because the DM has to relay this information to the party member that entered the library.
And it's not like every single time you have some secret encounter, you can just leave the room.
Yeah.
That's kind of tedious.
That takes a lot of time. So it's so much easier to just tell the character right there in front of everybody. But everybody else has to understand that they don't know that information, so they can't use that information when making a decision.
And so maybe, like, remind them a few times.
that might feel more like it's the responsibility of the character to keep track of, but as a DM, you can be like, sorry, you can't take that into account when making this decision.
Yeah. Crosstalk sucks.
I hate it. It's so annoying.
Those are 4 ones that we use. Now let's come up with a bunch of new ones.
Okay. What's the first topic?
How do we fix stealth checks?
Stealth checks.
So it's a really weird thing that people, like, DMs never know when to actually do stealth checks. Because there's so many different encounters of when you should do stealth. Some people, like, agree that you should do it just when someone has, like, direct line of sight with you. Or, like, looking in the general area. So, like, if you're trying to sneak past a guard... And, like, you're walking, like, generally in front of them. You have to make a sneak check, or a stealth check.
Stealth check.
A stealth check not to be noticed. So,
yeah,
like,
but that applies to, like, hearing and stuff,
yeah,
too.
So, like, even, like, when you're moving on, like, forest ground, maybe you have them make another stealth check to, like, step softly on the crunchy leaves.
But do you make them make a stealth roll for every sense that would be used?
Oh, what if you had them make the stealth check every single time the situation changed? So, like, they move to a different position that, like, changes something. So, like, they have, like, the character that they're trying to sneak around has a different angle of sight on them. Ooh. Or, like, they moving through an area that's a little bit louder. Or, like, the guard that they're trying to sneak past moves.
That definitely makes stealth way harder.
So that kind of creates, like, this sort of, like, Assassin's Creed type feel where you're like, I have to make sure that I have something covering me from this person's sight.
Exactly.
At all times.
I do kind of like that.
So maybe just for stealth checks, instead of just doing it randomly, have them do it whenever they come into like certain circumstances, like they move across really loud ground, or
that also is like
line of sight changes.
What counts as a big enough change to make them roll again? I guess that's up to the DM.
Yeah,
right?
it's honestly just up to DM preference. So
if they go from walking on paved road to like gravel, maybe they have to roll again.
That one would make sense because gravel's pretty loud. So
Yeah.
maybe like use out of game context to like understand. Fun idea. What if you just like to figure this out, just went outside and walked on a bunch of different surfaces?
That's so good.
Figure out like how hard it is to sneak around on that kind of stuff.
Maybe. And maybe if two things are like close enough, like crunchy leaves and crunchy gravel, they're so similar
that it's just the same.
That it's kind of just the same thing. So
yeah.
the first stealth check would apply to both.
What if the stealth DC got harder when vision was lower? It's like imagine like you're playing night games and it's like in a forest and it's really hard to see everything because there's trees and like the canopy of the leaves.
Then the stealth DC is like
higher.
They have to hit like a 20 on their perception in order to see instead of like a 15.
No, I would say like 20 on stealth because you can add them like both together. So like they're not breaking leaves or breaking sticks as they're moving through them, but also not running into things.
I see what you're saying. I was thinking the other way, where like
if it's really dark, impact stealth. That might work too.
Well, no. But like the DC, I guess would it's not a DC, but you'd have to roll lower on stealth in order to be stealthy. Does that make sense? Like if it's dark and the human can't see,
well, maybe
you don't have to roll as high in order to sneak past them.
Maybe. Well, again, it just depends on like the environment that you're in. Because like if you're sneaking through,
I see what you're saying too.
Like a corridor, but there's like no,
like torches.
There's no torches or anything, so it's hard to see, but you can still like get the general sense because it's just a straight shot.
Yeah.
It's like you understand where things are, and there's a guard at the end of it. That would be a little bit easier than like moving through a very thick forest when it's pitch black and there's like no stars and no moon.
Yeah. So then, okay, I get what you're saying. Where, like, if it's dark, you're not going to see the crunchy leaf on the ground, and you might step on it.
Or you might just, like, get smacked in the head by a stick.
I guess it would probably depend on if the character has dark vision or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just however, however, like, covered up their senses are.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think we fixed stealth.
I don't know if we fixed it, but we definitely changed it.
But we helped, I think. So, basis... When it gets darker and like you're in a harder environment, the stealth check is higher, and also you only have them make stealth checks when situation changes. Like they move from grass to gravel, or the guard moves so that they have a different line of sight with them. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Unless maybe the line of sight change doesn't affect anything. If they weren't looking at you to begin with and they turn and they're still not looking at you, the first stealth check should still
that should still be there. Read Ranger's Apprentice. You can understand about stealthing from that.
You need to read Ranger's Apprentice.
I have read it.
You only read the first one.
I read the first one, and that details like the entirety of sneaking around in the forest.
That's not enough, but okay.
It's fine.
I learned so much from that book. Like I'm so good at night games now. Anyway.
Bruh, so am I.
What's up next?
Next one is Barbarian Rage. You brought up this.
Okay, barbarians need to have advantage on attack rolls if using strength.
So it doesn't explicitly say it inside of the player's handbook, but it is kind of unanimously agreed that barbarians get advantage on attack rolls because so the technical term...
It says they get advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws.
So...
And I would argue that an attack roll is a strength check.
Because you also get proficiency with that.
Exactly.
So you should technically have advantage.
Sure, but I have played with DMs who don't play that way, and you don't get advantage as a barbarian
it's really
raging.
all up to whatever the DM decides.
I personally think that
I honestly think that you should get an advantage. It's probably not a great idea not to give them advantage because it makes sense. Like if you go into a bloodthirsty rage, you're not going to care about if you rip a muscle while you're swinging your sword, right? Mm-hmm. So.
Or if you hit the wall and the person, as long as you hit the person.
That's true. Okay, we've also got warlocks.
Ooh,
what?
That's one I just thought of.
What?
Should you get disadvantage on attack rolls with weapons that have the reach property in a narrow corridor?
Yes, easily. Like poles.
Is that? I don't think that's an.
I don't think it's an official rule, but that should happen. So like, you can't imagine trying to joust in a little cavern.
Well, jousting's easy because you're just going forward. I'm talking, imagine trying to swing like a warhammer.
Warhammers aren't big enough. That's the thing. Warhammer's only like 5 feet tall.
Okay, then a halberd.
You mean like a greatsword? I think halberd.
Halberd.
Do they have a halberd in D&D?
Yeah, they do.
Does it have the reach property?
Uh-huh.
Oh. That would make sense.
Or like a glaive even.
Yeah. The things that are longer, it would make sense because you wouldn't be able to get like a lot of height because you just tink against the roof.
Yeah, or even you can't bring it like around over your head.
Well, but you could also just stab with it.
Depending on the weapon. You can't stab very easily with like a halberd.
Yeah, you can't. They have the spiky top. It's essentially just an axe.
Okay, how about like a scythe? You can't stab with a scythe.
That's fair. That's fair. So maybe Reapers just get disadvantage in corridor. I figured out how to beat death, guys.
Stand in a skinny hallway. You'll never get gotten.
You'll never die. Alright, what about Warlock spell slots? I hate Warlock spell slots.
There's too few of them. You get one spell slot at first level.
So what should we...
Actually, what are they?
I think it is one spell slot.
I know it's one at first level, but I don't know how they stack up.
Do they go up per level? I don't think they do.
Let me look. I don't think they do either.
I did use the point buy system once. So you can either use spell slots or you can use spell point system.
They get 4 spell slots at level 20.
Really?
Yep, 4.
Oh my gosh.
They do.
When do they get the second one?
They have 4. They get the second one at level 2, and then the third at level 11, and then the fourth at level 17.
So, yeah. It doesn't...
Now, we can't give them the same number of spell slots as, say, like, a sorcerer.
That makes sense.
Because they have all the invocations.
Well, so what's a way that we can, like, add on to this without changing it? Like, is there a way that we can do that? Because I remember once I played as a warlock, and I was like, the amount of spell slots is, like, pitiful. Can I use something that they call the spell point system? So what they do is they convert... Like, you have... So, for example, at 3rd level, you have 2 second-level spell slots. So you convert those to points. I believe it's 6 points. And then second-level spell slots are each 3 points. They each cost 3 points. First levels cost 2. So, essentially, you have 3 first level or 2 third level.
Okay. That kind of makes sense.
It kind of works unless you're at lower levels.
It really doesn't work at lower levels.
Yeah, that's the one problem with Warlock is
the spell
slots.
But at level 20,
at level 20, it would be better.
5th level spell slots. But, like, even still. And then, I actually like the way they do spell slots for 6th through 9th level. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Some of them are decent, but I don't know, like, how would you fix that?
I'm not sure. I mean, the most obvious answer is just, like, give them more spell slots.
Though you might want to add the disadvantage of... Because they also have... The reason they gave them so few spell slots is because they have the ability to just take a short rest and then get them all back. And regain them all, yeah. So maybe take that away and just give them more spell slots. Because Warlocks have a different kind of spell casting from every other class.
Have their invocations known. Give them more... Maybe you can, like, replace an invocation for a spell slot.
Huh. So, like, when you get to choose invocations, instead of choosing invocations, you can choose spell slots.
Or maybe even use them interchangeably. So at like
sorcery points.
Sort of.
I like that. Actually.
So at like 20th level, you have 12 slots that you can either use for spells or for invocations.
I like that.
Maybe
that's a good idea.
I don't know how invocations work.
Invocations, they're just kind of like standby things.
But is there like a limit to how many you can use per?
No.
Per rest? I think it depends on the invocation.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
But that is a good idea. I do like that. Though some of them you wouldn't be able to use that for. Some of them would just like automatically take up the slot because they're just like ongoing effects.
Yeah. Okay.
But like it could work in the same way as meta magic with sorcerers do, because like you can cast Eldritch Blast and then you can use one of your other spell slots to add on to that Eldritch Blast to make it like the reaching shot.
Yeah. Okay. That could work. I don't know. It doesn't... Maybe my invocations idea doesn't work great. Because they're not like invocation slots. It's just how many you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that would take a lot more working out.
Yeah. It's a start, though.
It is. I do kind of like the idea of mixing, like, sorcery.
The worst part of Warlocks is they get to learn 15 spells. They have 15 spells for 4 slots.
Ugh. And, like, you always want to give them shield because shield's the best. Okay, so here's another really annoying thing for all DMs. The alert feat. It's stupid. Can you pull up the official rules for it?
Let me find it.
So at 4th level, you can either get an ability score improvement or you can get feats.
That happens every time you get the ability score improvement.
Yeah. So you can choose multiple feats or you can choose to get ability score improvements. So there's this one feat called the alert feat that personally I hate and do not let my players use because it kind of just...
There are a lot of feats that are just broken.
Yeah.
I feel like crossbow expert is too much.
Okay, so...
Anyway, alert. Always on the lookout for danger, you gain the following benefits. You gain a +5 bonus to initiative. You can't be surprised while you are conscious. And other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you.
That literally just takes away all the DM's fun. Because you can't do surprise attacks. It makes them go first in almost every single encounter. And invisible creatures don't do anything.
Yep. It's stupid.
It's stupid. So we're going to, rewrite...
We're going to totally rewrite it.
Why is it having a bonus to initiative?
Should have
passive
a bonus
perception.
to passive perception.
Because, that is alertness. Maybe
even passive insight. Maybe?
No, that would be more like...
Maybe.
No, alert's more to the outside world instead of feelings.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know why I thought insight was investigation for a second. But you're right.
So, maybe it's a +5 instead of to initiative to passive perception.
Maybe not a +5, but, a bonus.
Yeah. Just give a bonus to...
Maybe a +3.
Yeah.
+5 is still good. I don't know.
I like +3. So +3 to passive perception. Now what abilities can we use? I hate the one that says you can't be surprised. Because surprising as a DM is really fun.
It's really fun. Maybe...
what are some traits that people that are actually really alert have?
They're on caffeine. They're very shaky.
If it's in line of sight, they have advantage on dexterity checks.
Sure.
So or they have the uncanny dodge feat that rogues have. So if a fireball gets cast at you, you can possibly take no damage.
I like that. Do we just give them the same uncanny dodge?
I like giving them uncanny dodge. Okay, so maybe because uncanny dodge is a really powerful effect.
It is, really.
So maybe just give them the +3 to passive perception and then the uncanny dodge.
Maybe that's it.
And then if you don't want to give them uncanny dodge, then just say if they have line of sight of whatever's happening,
they get advantage
on dex save.
But only dex save.
Yeah, nothing else makes sense.
Maybe intelligence or wisdom.
No, because those are mostly mental. Because dex save is reacting to what you're saying.
But if you're alert, because perception's already wisdom.
Yeah.
So maybe you could give them advantage on wisdom saves because they're already thinking that something's going on. I don't know.
I like the dex save.
I like the dex
because
save.
It feels more.
I don't want to give them uncanny dodge though, because then it kind of makes it totally useless for rogues or monks.
Yeah, it's fair. Because you can just get it at 4th level. Yeah. Okay, so maybe don't give them uncanny dodge. But advantage on dexterity checks is also pretty high considering how many things you use that.
Yeah, it's most spells.
Most spells. So maybe those two are probably enough.
I think that's probably fine.
Okay.
It's already better than it was before.
Yeah.
Way more balanced.
So the alert feat, you get +3 to passive perception, and you get advantage on dex checks if you have line of sight of whatever is happening.
Maybe not even line of sight. Maybe just in general.
No, that's true. Because it also comes with passive perception.
Exactly.
Being able to hear the whooshing of air as a fireball approaches from behind.
Or feel the heat, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well that's the alert feat. Alright, how are we going to fix passive perception and passive insight?
Why do they need to be fixed?
Well, passive insight's never used. It's a very unused DM thing.
So does it need to be fixed? Or are we just getting
I feel we need to get it out there.
Use passive insight.
Use passive insight. Because not everybody's constantly looking to see, right now, I'm looking at Jaden, listening to what he's saying, and I'm not constantly trying to figure out if he's lying or not.
Exactly.
So, have a...
I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, so it has the same effect as passive perception, or you use it in the same way as passive perception, just for insight instead.
So passive insight, how is that calculated again?
So it's 10 plus whatever the skill for insight is. So
I believe it's wisdom.
So... yeah, it is wisdom. So you have a +3 in wisdom, you have proficiency in insight, then your passive insight would be 10, +3 because of wisdom, +2 because of proficiency. So you have a 15 in passive insight.
I'm sorry, you gotta say that again. I missed
you
that.
have to look at a character
I'm looking
sheet.
it up. Okay.
So it's 10 plus all modifiers
Passive
that
checks.
rely to or that go to it. So like if you have proficiency in perception and
Is passive insight not in this book?
no, most things don't use it.
True. Okay, so it's 10
plus whatever
plus wisdom
modifiers.
modifier.
Yes, and then if you're proficient in
And
it,
if your proficiency
then it adds another 2, or whatever your.
So if you have a
proficiency
16 in wisdom and proficiency for insight, you'd have a 15.
Yes.
At first level.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
So use passive insight. Now, when should we use passive perception instead of having them roll for perception? Like, what would be the difference between those two?
I think if they state they want to look around somewhere, you make them roll.
Okay. Well, also
For the
investigation though. Oh wait, no, investigation would be
depends.
like looking around, like moving things.
If they are looking around a room to see what's in it, roll perception. If they're examining like an armoire, investigation.
If they're just standing there and
If
something's
they are
happening
walking
off to the
down a
side,
corridor and they are not explicitly stated that they want to be looking around for suspicious activity,
then passive
perception.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we fixed those 2 problems too.
I think we did.
Wow, we fixed so many problems.
We're just so good at everything.
We are great, even though we're 2 dumb DMs. You know, just
And
put in
that's
it.
what makes us so great. It's because we're so dumb.
It's a fact. All DMs should be dumb.
True.
Okay, well, that was that was
Home
table
rules.
no, what are they called?
House
rules. There we go.
The house always wins.
No, okay. Hey, that's what we can call this section.
The house always wins.
This was the house always. I like that.
Are we gonna do this every week then?
I don't know. We don't have to do this section every week.
Every once in a while we'll do a house always wins section.
I like the house always wins section.
I also want to do a homebrew section sometime.
Yes, we'll have to do homebrew sessions. Well, thanks for listening. Now we're gonna go to another section. Bye. Wow. I love those house rules. Do you like those house rules?
Those were pretty good house rules.
I like what
what
they did with the alert feat, you know.
I like that one too.
That one was really good.
Did you know, actually, interesting factoid for you, for house rules. Did you know that the house always wins, actually?
Really?
Yeah, it's true.
Yo, I think that's the name of that section.
I think it
Now that
is.
I think about
I think it is, yeah.
Wow.
I wrote that for them. I came up with that.
It's pretty cool. Well, now we're going to go to one more. This is new DM advice.
For new DMs.
Well, no, really.
Shut up. And we're back with DM advice for either new or returning DMs.
Yes.
Because you've never been a DM long enough to not learn something.
Yep, that's true.
Old DMs can still learn new monsters. I think that's how the quote goes.
New DMs can learn new monsters. I read the monster manual every 3 days. I'm constantly learning new monsters.
Dude,
that's what all source books are. It's just DM learning new monsters.
Exactly.
So
there's like a monster in every single source book.
That's true. So I have been DMing since freshman year, which
was what,
3 or 4 years ago. So I've been DMing for a while. So I've come up with like strategies that work for me. Jaden started this year.
DMing for about 3 months.
And just gonna say,
I'm having a lot of fun. I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
DMing is very fun. It's a lot of people actually get scared of it. I've realized because it's very daunting. Because like
it's a lot.
It's a very big change from being a player to being a DM.
Hey, I went straight to DMing. I was never a player.
That's true. You were never a player.
I went straight to being a DM first.
I need a DM session for you, buddy.
No, you need to.
No, I need to.
Shut up.
Okay, well, so here's some DM advice that both of us have learned. Him over a short time, me over my decently long time. So the first tip we have is to choose your own DM style. So the DM's Guide talks about this a lot.
A lot.
So there's a lot of different styles of Dungeon Masters.
And you don't have to like pick up the same style as someone else. You could come up with your totally own style.
Or you don't even have to pick one to stick with the entire campaign. You can just switch it. So the two big ones that it shares in the Dungeon Master's Guide is, one is where you roll for literally everything. Every social encounter, every combat encounter, like the dice are determining what happens in the world.
It's way strict.
It's super strict, but it does create more of a gameplay type feel, which is what a lot of people enjoy.
Well, maybe not gameplay, but it's
but like crunching numbers sort of stuff. So like stats and all stuff like that. So there's that there's that style, and then there's another style where you almost roll for nothing. So like maybe
only
for a few
rolling in like combat.
Yeah, so like combat, maybe a few like ability checks, but then like all social encounters are purely roleplay. So you can choose one of those two polar opposites, or you can even choose like your own middle ground.
I'm pretty in the middle.
Yeah, same. Personally, I prefer to like leave them to whatever the heck they're doing in their roleplay social encounters, while making them
afterward. You make them roll.
Yeah, so like they have like this big like elaborate talk with their arch nemesis, and then they have to roll like persuasion or intimidation at the very end of it. And depending on how well they did in like their
roleplay, that changes
the DC. Yeah. So the first thing is choose your own DM style. So make sure to not, like we said, don't just see what other people are doing and think that that's perfect for you. And try them out. Like, don't stick with one.
Feel free to just switch them around and stuff.
If you feel like one's not working, then try the other one. Or try just like a slightly skewed one. So like right in the middle, or like a little bit to more rolling, or a little bit to more roleplay. Yeah. Okay, what's the second tip we have?
The second tip we have is to exercise your authority as a DM respectfully as possible.
Yes.
So, for example, that whole house rules section we just did, you have to enforce those for your players and be like, this is how we're playing the game, so please do this. But you can't be mean about it, because nobody's going to have fun if you're just yelling and screaming at them the whole time. So you have to calmly approach them and say, hey, listen, this is how we're playing the game. Please play the game this way, or else I might be forced to not have you at my table anymore.
Yeah.
Depending on how often they have infractions and whatever.
Yeah. So on top of that is like also making sure to lay down your house rules. So like make sure your players, like session 0, know what the house rules are, so that they can know what's different from like the standard D&D rules.
Exactly.
And then like what we were talking about with crossplay, a lot of times it can like infuriate some DMs where they're like, I'm trying to get this thing across and I want them to be quiet, but I don't want to get in their faces about it. Don't be afraid to just like be like, hey guys,
please
stop talking for a second.
And if that still doesn't work, just don't repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Say something
if
happens,
they don't hear it,
and if they don't hear it, that's their fault.
I've done that a few times. My players have hated me for it because it's been like pivotal. And
I've done that more than once. Yeah.
So.
Be like, sorry.
Yeah. Make sure to exercise your authority, but
do it in the nicest way possible. So that everybody can still have a good time.
Don't get mean. Don't be mean to someone. And that's not ever a good idea.
build that mutual respect between player and dungeon master.
Yeah.
That is just a lot of fun.
And then eventually, once you build that respect, the players will start listening to you as soon as you give them either like a gentle reminder, or even if you give them no reminders.
Yeah.
They'll eventually just start doing it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Even if you like add a new rule or change something that you decided wasn't working.
Yeah.
They'll listen if you have that respect.
As a DM, you should know that you have the responsibility and the power to stop them if they're doing something you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next thing. This is a very hard one for especially new DMs, but even some older DMs to grasp. Plan to either not use or to have a lot of different plans.
No, here's the thing. From my very short experience, I found that it's best to plan like 3 or 4 different ways and then still expect all of them to go off the rails.
Yep.
And if you do that, instead of just having one way that you want them to stick to, and then if they do anything else, you're boned. But if you have like 3 or 4 different paths they can take and they still decide not to follow any of them, you can take tidbits from all 3 or 4 of those different paths and throw them into a new one.
Yeah, so imagine they go into a dungeon and you have you have a crossroads where it has 2 paths, left and right, and you have all of this important stuff down to the right, and you lay down like the thickest, like, you need to go down this passageway. There's music, or, like, there's a child crying from the right path.
They're gonna go left.
And then they go left. What the heck are you supposed... All of your stuff is down the right, and they just went left. What are you gonna do? Well, you didn't plan what is down the left, because you expected them to go to the right.
Uh-huh.
What is stopping you from taking what's in the right...
and moving it to the left.
Moving it to the left.
Exactly.
Or, you could even just... If it's like a dungeon thing, you could literally just make it be a back entrance.
Hey, back entrance.
PC doesn't stand for player character. It stands for plot corrupter.
True.
So... Expect them to
your campaign to go off the rails, because everybody just wants to have fun, and they want to do whatever they want, and that's the fun part of Dungeons and Dragons, is that they're expressing themselves.
More than one time in your campaign, it will go off the rails, and will not go where you're expecting it to, but that is part of the fun. You can't
give up.
Yeah.
You can't
just be like, well, I don't know what to do, I guess we're going to spend this whole session doing nothing, and then I'm going to be like sad about it, because now the storyline isn't going anywhere. Yeah. Who says you can't change where the storyline goes, or change when things happen, or even force them into an encounter?
I mean, hey.
It's kind of railroading, but like if they're not doing what you need them to do at that moment, just say, hey, you are literally summoned to a position.
And something you can do is, if you like need more time to come up with what's going to happen next, because you didn't plan for something to happen, they do something crazily unexpected, and you're not sure how to tie everything back in, drop them into combat, because that typically takes a while, then end the session. And then you have another week or however long to think about how you're going to tie everything back in.
Either do combat, or you could even, if it's like not something super, super big, you can even just throw them into a bar for a few minutes, let them have their own fun while you're figuring this thing out behind the scenes. Let them role play to their heart's content, and then be like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. You can even express them, be like, hey, I need a moment to just like figure out where this goes. Can you guys just role play this really quick social encounter?
Yeah. The vast majority of players are going to understand that just
players.
fine.
Don't leave them out of your plans. It's
just the way to do things.
It's the way to do things.
It's just the way the Oreo falls apart in the milk when you leave it there for too long.
That's why you use the fork. Wait, how long? Hold on. Quick aside. How long are you leaving your Oreo?
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't
want to talk about it.
Just sticks it in and leaves it in there for like 2 minutes until as you pull it out, it's just like this soggy mess, like just slowly like melts. I don't want to talk about it. This black milk.
You put it in until there's nothing but cream left, and then you just eat the cream.
Ew! Oh, it's like soggy and covered in...
Okay, moving on. What's the next tip on your list,
So, we've also got... Don't worry about getting everything right. This is another thing that a lot of DMs struggle to understand.
This goes back to the previous things we've talked about. Like, you have the freedom to try something out and be like, that didn't work. And that goes for if you're like homebrewing a weapon or a character.
Or even just house rules.
Or just like the campaign in general. Don't be afraid to be like, well, that didn't work at all. Yeah. Let's try something different.
So you can even, if you're trying something like super experimental, at the beginning of the session, you can just say like, hey guys, I'm trying out this new thing. It might not work the way I have it planned or the way you think it's going to go. So we're just going to roll with it, see what happens, and then if it works, next session we'll keep it in or we'll take it out if it doesn't.
Like I've homebrewed weapons for my whole table. All of my PCs, they all have these unique weapons, and I've like play tested them a little bit, but I don't know how balancing is going to work. So I am going to leave myself open to tweaking the damage or whatever ability they have at any time. Mm-hmm. And that's the best way to do things.
And when we say at any time, it includes like in session.
In the middle of a session.
I remember, this is one of my bad DM moments. Actually, no, this was a good DM moment now that I think about it. So I had this really hard encounter planned for my PCs because I kind of wanted them to be scared for their characters to die. This is like in the same dark fantasy thing. So it was kind of like this horror setting. So they had already made sanity checks, which is another homebrew rule that we didn't talk about. They already made sanity checks, and they had, like, all of them had failed, so they were all freaked out, including in player, because it had some really good, like, effects, like music and other stuff going on. It was really nice. And so all of them were, like, freaking out. My sister was, like, on the edge of her seat, like, what is about to happen? And then I had these, like, animatronic monsters come out. I had play-tested them for the barbarian to be there.
The barbarian was not there.
The barbarian was not there. but there were more people than I had play tested with, so I was like, oh, this will be fine. And also the person that was playing the cleric was overpowered. Parker, I'm talking to you if you're listening to this. But I got about halfway through the combat, and they had, like, done maybe 15 damage out of 60 to one of them, and 2 of them were unconscious.
And that's when you go,
and I was like, this is not going to end well. And then Parker grabs onto its face and, like, melts its face off. Only does, like, 10 damage. And I was just like, you knocked that one off. That one's unconscious.
Yeah.
That one's dead, as you see it. And he was just like, cool. And then finally, somebody gets up and goes and punches the other one. Like, that one falls unconscious. They didn't do even, like, half of the damage. And they were getting wiped out. And I was just like, nope, this is not... I don't want you to die right now. I want you to get close, but I don't want you dying.
But that's how it has to go sometimes.
Don't be worried to do something wrong. And if something does go wrong, don't be worried to fix it. Okay? Your players don't know what's happening behind the screen, so they don't know if you change something.
Exactly. As the DM, you literally have total control and absolute power over the world that you're in. So use it.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to, like, manipulate.
Don't be afraid to be the god,
okay? Don't be afraid to be the god of the D&D world.
Don't be afraid to keep moving forward.
Sounds like a marching band thing.
That's from the Cadets video.
Oh, of course it is. All right, so the next thing we have is thematic encounters.
Hey, thematic encounters.
Wait, hold on. Is it thematic or thematic?
Thematic. I don't know why I said thematic. Shut up. That, now thematic encounters are fun. This has to do with not only the gameplay setting that you're in, but also who you're fighting. For example, if, like, my characters right now are fighting an evil druid, a dark druid.
Hey, don't reveal spoilers for your campaign in case any of them listen.
I won't. I got
it.
Okay. They're fighting this bad druid who is, like, trying to stop a kingdom from tearing down his forest, but going about it in evil means. But he's still a druid, so he still absolutely despises elemental evil and, like, the undead. So he's not going to be using any of those creatures as enemies or, like, his minions because he still despises them, even though those are easy enemies to, like, throw into an encounter. Like, undead are literally everywhere in the monster manual, but don't use them if they don't fit the setting.
NPCs have morals, just like players do.
Exactly.
So if it doesn't make sense for an NPC to use one of these things, then don't have them use it. You can find other ways around it. This kind of goes along with DM style. I mean, there are other kinds of DM styles besides just the way, like, you go with rules. It goes down to everything. You can even do, like, whether you want to be roleplay or combat heavy. Do you want it to be more like Doom Eternal kind of stuff where you walk into a dungeon and you just murder everything? Or do you want it to be more of, like, this kind of intrigue sort of, like, encounter based?
You can play anything from Animal Crossing to Assassin's Creed to Doom.
Exactly.
And anywhere in between.
So the best one that I have found, for me at least, is right in between them. Where it's like this perfect mix of social encounters with combat, and then a little bit of, like, intermingling. Like, you use combat effects inside of social encounters. Like, the barbarian rages and has advantage on intimidation because he looks scary. Mm-hmm. Or in, like we're talking about, thematic encounters, where, like, you're in combat, and not only do you, like, take into part the NPC's morals, but you also, like, describe what happens. So, like, the wizard just cast, like, this incredible, like, lightning storm, and you detail what happens, or you even let the players detail it. You say, okay, you rolled this, they all failed, what happens?
What do you see?
So, like, there's a spell called chain lightning that you hit one person and it jumps to a bunch of other people. Mm-hmm. Have the player explain that, or even you explain that. If the player isn't super confident in that, you go ahead and do it. You just say this, like, crack, like, with this same sort of encounter, this crackling blue energy sparks out of the wizard's hands, jumps through the air, sizzling, heating the air up around it, making people's hair go on end as it strikes one goblin down, stopping his heart instantly, and then jumps to another and does the same thing over and over again 5 different times.
Yep.
Describe it. It makes your players get invested in the story. Like, it makes them feel like what's happening is real. It's like reading a storybook that they're writing.
Exactly. And that goes for, like, IRL stuff too. You can have mood lighting or music or, heck, even, like, costumes, minis, little pictures that you draw.
Music is a very big help. I've found that a lot, especially for like just not just encounters, but even just for setting the mood.
Yeah.
Like they'll walk in and I already have music playing, just like this like nice, just like calming music. And then I remember once we were playing, it was the same thing with like the animatronics. Mm-hmm. And so it went from the nice light mood, and then I immediately hit the scariest one I had, and I could see every single one of the players just like immediately change their body language and like go on end. So if you ever need a bunch of just like already preset playlists, just go onto Spotify and look up the art. I think he has it as RPG playlist. He has like hundreds of different playlists. Those are the ones I use, and they work the best. Heck, even make your own.
Use video game music. Yeah, that's what I like to do.
Video game and movie music works the best.
Video game music and movie soundtracks are great.
So find some like movies or video games that are like in the same sort of style or same setting as what your campaign is in, and then like,
or it doesn't even have to.
Yeah, it doesn't have. You can just like find ones that you like.
I think
like,
hey, Hollow Knight music is great for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, especially for like dungeon crawling.
Oh,
if you use Hollow Knight for dungeon crawling, or you don't even have to use that kind of music. Like there's this one all instrumental band that I really enjoy that has like this one super like bass pump like video game style music that's not exactly from a video game but I feel like it would be like this really good boss music. You don't even just have to use music that's like made for that stuff, and
use different music for different encounters. If it's just like a low level encounter, just use like some sort of more calm combat music. But if it's like heavy boss music, you're pulling out like the Doom Slayer,
sick, like electric riffs.
Exactly.
Music and mood.
And that's all about setting the theme of the campaign. It's like you got to pick what works best for what you want to do, both in game and IRL.
It changes what happens. Like it makes your players feel like they're in the world. Yeah, and it makes them get invested a lot better.
Plus, music is just fun to listen to.
Music is always fun to listen to. I mean, we are both musicians, so maybe it's coming from like a biased standpoint. Okay, kind of on a similar thing, what about like incorporating characters into your world?
Ooh, that's fun.
So this is a fun thing. This is another way to get your players like really invested in their character, and not only in their character, but also in the campaign you're running. Have your players, like session 0, have them make their characters, and then
write a full background.
Have like a full background, not just like this little like the back of the character sheet, little tiny paragraph, and that's it.
Like I want your life story.
Yeah, like what were your parents like?
So
what
that I can
made you so do
that
this?
I can have the BBEG kidnap your baby brother.
Oh my gosh.
Or I can have your family die in a horrible accident. Or
if you use all great D&D podcasts use this method where they like have the players write out their characters' ideals, backgrounds, personality traits, and then they use those.
Don't feel bad asking for more. If you don't have enough to pull from, give it back to them and be like, I need a little more.
Yeah. It's make sure to like border on the end of too much than too little.
Exactly.
You never want too little, and you can never have too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can always add in. Also, don't feel bad making the player feel bad.
Yeah. Kill their family.
Kill
their favorite NPC.
If there's like a rogue, rogues are stereotypically like my family died and I had to live in an orphanage and I'm like super stereotypically edgy and I hate everybody.
That's when you play the...
What if a rogue had like really sweet, kind and caring parents and then you were just like, nah, they're dead now. The BBEG wrecked them. It gives the player a reason to go through the fight the BBEG. I found in multiple campaigns that I've run that I don't do this.
You don't give
and the players get to the end and they're just like, cool, we won. What was the point of this? I don't even remember why we were killing this guy. So add like this dynamic feeling of having their characters intermingling with your world.
Yeah. And feel free to like, if you have an NPC that make NPCs with the explicit purpose of dying.
Yeah.
Of getting close to the party and getting killed. Or even if that wasn't the original purpose of the NPC, you can still kill them off to get the players more invested in the story.
It's really great to have the pinnacle, the greatest moment of any GM's life is when they introduce like this kind, caring like little child. And then a few sessions later, they get into a bad scrape and the kid dies. And then one of the players starts crying. That is possibly one of the... It's sad, but it's one of the greatest moments for a DM to feel.
The DM can feel.
Because you feel like you got these players...
to connect
to be their character. That's one of the big things that's so hard for players to do, is to put away what they are dealing with outside, put away what they feel, what they think they would do, throw it in the trash can for a few hours, and then be the character. Is instead of thinking, so like, you have the encounter of like, there's a dragon, and you're playing a barbarian that's super reckless and like always is looking for a fight, versus you yourself wants to avoid encounters.
Heck, I would run away from the dragon.
Yeah, exactly.
But my character is charging headlong in.
A lot of players will be like, let's be a little bit more cautious, whereas their character would like rush through everything, not care about social encounters, or not even care about safety.
And hey, that's another thing. Alignment.
Ooh.
Alignment's tricky. Lots of people take it way too seriously. But I think alignment can be a very good thing, at least from a roleplay perspective.
It gives them something to build around, but they shouldn't be so strict as to say, I am lawful neutral and I am staying lawful neutral.
Yeah. I feel like you should maybe pick one thing instead of both. Be like, I'm chaotic.
Yeah. I abide by laws, even if some of those laws aren't great. Or, like, I break all laws, even if some of them are for the better good.
It doesn't have to be, like, directly out of the book, true neutral, lawful good, whatever.
And, I mean, people are not, like... You can't walk up to a person, look at everything they've done in their life, and be like, hey, you are lawful evil. You can't do that. That's not physically possible, because people change in every single encounter.
Really, realistically, every single person you meet is going to be true neutral.
Yeah. They don't have premonitions that stay one way. Like, a lawful good paladin that is following, like, the pantheon of light still makes some evil choices,
still will
right?
do some bad
things. It might kill an innocent goblin that was just there because they were forced to, or because they accidentally made collateral damage, and it killed a family. Just because they did these things that were chaotic doesn't mean that they're a completely different person.
They're suddenly a different person.
Yeah. Alignment is such a tricky thing.
So alignment is a good thing if used correctly.
Don't use it to the extent of it's like
so
railroad tracks.
But use it to help yourself and the characters understand what they're gonna do. What they would do.
Yeah. So make sure to have your players like invest in their character, and then use what they're investing into their character into your world, because then it creates this great storyline that everyone remembers for years to come.
And if you do that, you can have callbacks to other events that happen in their life. You can, like, somebody's pet dog ran away, and then suddenly they find it one day during the campaign. Or even bigger things where, like, the old lady that you helped cross the street
turns out to be the BB.
No! I mean, yeah. Or there's this powerful wizard who helps you defeat the dragon at the end of the game. Something like that, where you lay out these hints, and then at the end...
And then bring it back.
You can look. Have you seen Knives Out? Does a very similar thing, where the whole... Yeah, sort of like
Clue. Same with Clue, yeah.
Where at the end... You get all the clues laid out in front of you. But if you go back and watch it again, you pick up on all the clues the whole time.
It creates like this sort of like puzzle-like feel. This especially works well for like mystery-oriented things, where like you are laying down these subtle hints and clues throughout the entire campaign. And you have one person that's like a really steady note-taker, and they're writing down all of these things, and they're like, these don't connect at all. And then you bring in the one massive plot line, and they're like, oh my gosh, I get this.
And that is so cool for the players, because they figured it out. And not just as a player. They solved the mystery.
Not just as a player, but as a DM, to see like the recognition just like flash in their eyes, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. Like, it's such a great moment. And make sure to leave those things. Don't feel like you have to explain everything at that one moment. And don't feel like because you mentioned something a few sessions back, it's gone and it's going to stay there. You can bring things back.
The players will most likely remember. If only faintly. But they'll probably remember.
When you say it, they'll be like, oh, I get it. I remember that.
I get why that happened now. It makes sense.
And then also do callbacks with, like, their character's backstory. Yeah. Because those are some that, like, especially get the characters... Get the players into their character.
Brother or something.
Yeah, so, like, maybe you had, like, a younger brother that went missing one day, and you thought maybe he was, like, taken by some, like, being in the forest, or he was transported into the Feywild, and then halfway through the session, he comes back, and he's, like, older than you or something.
Ooh.
So, like, cool. This weird time skip happens, and all of a sudden, you have to, like, encounter this entirely new thing that is never seen in real life, but is what their character is encountering, and it has to do with what they had before.
Exactly. And do the same thing with NPCs.
Yeah.
If like, NPCs, it's so easy to just gloss over them and be like, oh yeah, they're just a leather worker. But if you take the time to craft a backstory, at least, like, surface level backstory and appearance and a name and everything, your characters can roleplay with that leather worker, and they might get so much more invested in that leather worker than the BBEG.
Yeah, so don't go to the extent... I did this once.
You don't need to write a novel for every NPC.
Don't write full-on backgrounds for every single NPC, because then you'll literally have, like, 20 pieces of paper for one town, and you're like, which barkeep is this? I don't remember. Exactly. It's not this one. Just write down, like, this very surface, like, he has a wife and 2 children. He's been working at this job for a few years. He moved here, like, maybe a year or so ago. He used to work on a ship, and then come up with, like, if you're into doing voices, come up with a voice. And make sure to write all of this down.
Yeah, write it down.
Because your character...
Don't feel bad taking notes during your own session.
Yeah.
Because you're probably BSing a lot of this stuff.
If you need to stop
you can't plan everything that the players are going to ask. So you can, like, BS something and write it down. I recommend having a laptop the whole time you're DMing. Nice.
So don't... Oh, what was I going to say? Shoot.
Probably something cool and profound.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, really wise.
Yeah, because I'm definitely a wise dude.
Yeah, so don't, like I said, don't write a novel for every character, but take the time and at least, like, somewhat flesh them out.
Yeah.
So that if your players start asking questions, they have another person that they're looking at, as opposed to just this blank face who's giving them random information.
It's not like a video game where it has, like, where the NPC has, like, 3 lines of dialogue that it has to follow.
Yeah.
It's this, like, dynamic character. Oh, also, with your notes, if you're doing voices, write down what the voice is, because your players will remember.
And you will not.
Also, write down names.
Names are important.
They will also remember names, and you will not, because you have about 20 other names.
You're keeping track of hundreds of things all at the same time, and they're not.
Yeah. Speaking of notes, and also with NPC names, I found that what's really nice to have, like, inside your binder or behind your screen or on your laptop is just a list of a bunch of names. It's like Smart. First name for male dwarf, first name for a female dwarf, and then a bunch of last names for dwarves. So then, like, they encounter a dwarven blacksmith, and you're just like, I don't have a name yet. We're gonna pick on, like, Brunier, Hammersmith, and then boom, you have something.
Brunier is born.
It's done right there. Born. And then you can flesh out this backstory as you're going. It gets, at the beginning when you're starting to do it, it's really hard to do, because it's just something that's uncommon for humans to do.
Is to just make up.
It's just to make things right on the spot. But as you do it more and more, it becomes more and more natural. You'll get way better at it. Like, this is not something I should be admitting, I don't prepare for sessions very well.
Me neither.
I think the last time I prepared, I'm doing, like, a seafaring campaign. The last thing I prepared was the next 4 islands they're going to. And that was 3 sessions ago. I have literally come up with 100 NPCs on the spot, and they're never going to know them again, and neither am I.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter.
But it's okay. Like, the way I do it is I map out the whole campaign. And then I'm like, okay, we'll figure out the fine details of getting them from point A to point B in the session.
So have, like, this massive, like, really cool world building thing where it's like, this is the main plot line of my storyline. This is the background of the world. This is the background of a bunch of, like, the main NPCs.
But then stuff.
And then as you play, just add in these cool little tidbits. Like, oh, this is a great idea. What if in every single place you encounter, this is something that I do, something massive massively important to the plot line happens. So, like, I'm running... I just won't spoil anything. I'm running this campaign where right now they're seafaring between a bunch of different islands, and they are trying to stop this, like, malice sort of thing from overtaking the world. And so, at the beginning of the campaign, they got to the first few islands, and I was like, everything's peachy. Nothing's going wrong here. No one suspects a thing. And then I started getting through, and I was like, what if on every single island, something is happening?
Something important
Something is happening.
On one of the islands, they're having a whole Moana incident. Yeah. All the food is gone.
So, like, on one island, they went in 3 different islands in just rapid succession. They did this in about two sessions, and I came up with this on the spot. First one, they entered a library that was taken over by the malice. Second one, they went to a town. They didn't encounter this, but in the background, it had, like, an evil like being in the castle that was starting to take over the king. And then the third one, they had to encounter this dark malice that had corrupted a scarecrow inside of a cave that had captured a little child.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be like something that the characters would see. Like, it can be like
we said,
have it going on, and if they encounter it, they encounter it. But if they don't, they don't, and they miss out on that part of the story. It's okay to keep secrets. It's
a fun aside. Like, you're not gonna, if you're playing or reading a book, you're not gonna catch up. Playing a book. Wow. If you're playing a game or reading a book, you're not going to pick up on every single little aside the author makes or every single inside joke he makes.
No.
It's very uncommon for you to understand everything that's going on behind the scenes, just like it is in the game. And like we said before, if your players don't encounter it, well,
that's okay.
That's okay. I mean, like, it might have been something really cool that you spent a lot of time on. If you really want it to happen, move it somewhere else. It's honestly not that hard, but make sure to keep notes so your players don't go, what happened on the 2 islands back, and you're like, the bad guys.
But maybe it's better for that. It's like, sorry, if you don't remember, your character is forgotten.
Yeah, you should.
Depends on the context.
You should tell your players to keep notes. So yeah, that's another thing. Encourage at least one of your players to keep notes. Because it helps not only you, but it helps them.
Yep.
Because then you don't have to be writing down every single little thing that the characters are noticing and that you're noticing. You only have to write down what you're noticing and what's going on behind the scenes. And then you can ask the player to, like, send you whatever they wrote down. And then you can mash those together. And then, boom, you've got a complete list of notes that's, like, 2 pages long and you only wrote half of it.
And, like, you can ask your players questions. Be like, sorry, what did I name this NPC again?
I did that multiple times.
Or, like... what did they look like? I don't remember exactly what I said their hair was.
Yeah.
Or what accent did I give them? Yeah.
And if your players don't know, well then, whoops, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
All right, and then we have...
This is a
fun one.
This is actually very different than what we were just talking about.
Yes, this is a... We're gonna...
Talking about monsters now.
Speaking of note-taking... Speaking of notes... What about stat blocks?
Stat blocks?
I found that in, like, podcasts, if you just say speaking of and then one thing for the sentence before,
and then
you can make a perfect segue. Perfect segue.
Speaking of segues, monsters.
Exactly. See, segue. Boom. You got a segue.
Anyway,
so
the monster manual
has stat blocks,
and
right?
many monsters. Many stats for many monsters.
Shall we figure out how many?
No, let's not.
You keep talking, I'll figure out.
Oh gosh. But those stat blocks are like, they're more like suggestions than the actual rules. You can take like a wolf and give it 4 times the health and 3 times the damage, and it's still a wolf.
Yeah, like you did with us.
Shut those were...
They were normal wolves, we were just first level players, and you put 4 of them against us.
Yeah, that was an easy encounter for you
guys. Sorry if one of us is completely...
You're the one that got taken out first turn.
I'm sorry, so did Caleb.
Caleb didn't get taken out first turn.
First turn, but he also killed 50 innocent people.
And a wolf.
Oh, wow, 1. I almost hit it. It was just because of the luck of the...
You rolled a natural
It's because of the luck of the dice. It's fine.
Anyway, monsters, they're not set in stone.
You can change them. If you feel like something's going... This is same with, like, making plans that can be broken. If you feel like an encounter's going a way that you don't want, like, they're just obliterating all of them...
Double the health.
Take the last one and double the health. And then it just becomes like this mini boss for it. Or if
double
they're
the damage even.
Like dying, just drop it. You can change every single stat
block. You can change
block.
Literally everything. Their strength value, the AC, the hit points, all of it.
Every single stat block has a challenge rating trying to say like this is what level you should pit them against. But you can change that challenge rating by literally changing a single number. Mm-hmm. Like, that is not set in stone. Those are just guidelines for first-time DMs. So, a lot of the first-timers will actually like just using the normal monsters and then seeing what works. It's way easier that way. It's a lot easier. But then as you start to progress and you feel like some things aren't working or some things are working too well, switch them a little bit.
Yeah.
You can even take, like, let's see, what did I do? I had a Drow Priestess. Instead of having its normal spells, I changed up the spells to fit my campaign a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any monster that can cast spells, as long as it doesn't explicitly say it only gets these spells,
it can cast whatever you want it to.
Yeah, if it's a spell casting monster, you can give it pretty much whatever spells you want.
And same with like weapons and armor. If a goblin I think normally only has like 13 AC.
But you can give it plate armor.
Yeah, you can give it plate armor really high, making it a harder encounter. Or you can even give it like a greatsword instead of its scimitar, where it doubles the damage output.
Exactly.
So these are like just simple ways to change where the CR and how the challenge is. It's like stat blocks are not
and to make it fit your campaign better.
Don't, like we said, make it interactive make it thematic.
If you want the NPCs, or not the NPCs, but the characters, the players, they're like level 6, and you want them to fight this hard battle against wolves, you can just buff those wolves to heck.
Yeah.
Instead of having to make them fight like 50 of them.
Or you can even literally just go online and look up for, like, homebrew wolves. Because people are... like, really cool. Like, there's this entire website, DriveThruRPG, focused completely on homebrew things that has, like, hundreds and hundreds of things, probably even millions. And they're all created by people that are not from D&D. These are just people that just, like, want to create these things for fun. And you don't have to, if you're, like, worried about making your own things and worried that you're going to mess up, go use someone else's.
Yeah.
They don't have copyright on it.
If you really, really want to make your own thing, an easy way to start, take a pre-existing thing, whether from the book or from another source, and tweak it just a little bit.
Very small amount. It doesn't have to be drastic.
Yeah. And homebrewing monsters is a lot of fun, and you get to, like, build an entire new creature for this setting that you've totally invented by yourself, that you don't already have. Like, Chinese or like Japanese dragons don't exist anywhere in any of the books. And you can't use an already existing dragon because they're not at all the same thing.
So then just change it up.
Yeah.
It's not hard. I mean, it might seem daunting, especially to a lot of new players who are looking at the monster stat blocks and like, I don't even understand half of these things. As you play, you'll understand more.
And you'll feel more confident.
Yeah, you'll feel more confident, and then you'll feel more confident in being able to change these things to, like, what you prefer or what you want to see in this.
Exactly.
Speaking of homebrew being fun, we have one more rule.
One more tip.
Just one more tip. Make sure everyone has fun.
That includes yourself as the dungeon master.
Don't make this campaign that's so tedious for you to run that you are just, like, suffering
that you're stressed
the entire time while your players are, like, having this really great time. That makes you have what's called DM burnout. And then you don't want to DM a session ever again. So make sure that you enjoy it. This game is not meant just for the PCs. It's meant for the DM as well.
Uh-huh. And all those tips we just talked about will help you get to this point where you can all have a good time.
You don't need to implement every single one of the tips at once. No. If you do that, it'll be very daunting.
Overwhelming.
So just, like, do one or two every single time. Yeah. New DMs happen literally all the time.
And if you don't like something we said, you don't have to incorporate that either.
Don't listen to us.
We're just two dumb DMs.
It's like not...
That's a callback to the title of this show.
Pulling in the freaky tips that we made.
Callbacks.
So yeah, make sure everyone has fun, okay? It's not going to be an enjoyable game if you're not having fun.
Exactly. You won't want to run it anymore if you're not having a good time. So having a good time is very important.
Having a good time is very important. Gary Gygax did not sit in his basement with a bunch of his guy friends just so that you could suffer so your other friends could have fun.
Exactly.
People write this game so that everyone can enjoy it in their own way. This game is not a sort of like choose your own adventure book. It's not. It doesn't have like these set things.
Than a choose your own adventure.
It's writing your own choose your own adventure book.
Exactly.
Like
especially when you play a DM and literally are writing the story.
Something especially important to keep in mind as a DM is that you are not the only one writing the story. That is not all on your shoulder. Your players are as well. What the decisions that they make influence how the story goes. So what you do is you take what they're doing and then apply it into the greater scheme of things.
Exactly.
And when you view it as that way, it shouldn't be as overwhelming of a thing. It should be more fun and more laid back for you.
Mm-hmm. If no plot progression happens during like a 3-hour session, that's fine. As long as everybody had fun.
You had fun. If people are like suffering because you had a just like purely shopping session and they just hated it because it was just all number crunching, they just had to do a bunch of like math and stuff, and they all hated it. That's when you failed as a DM.
That's when you fail.
That is the only time you ever fail as a DM. Like
that's true.
You can't only fail in any other way.
Nobody has fun. That's the only
as time. As long as a few people have fun, you did a great job DMing.
Even if it's even if it's just you.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a stretch. I don't know.
As long as
just make sure people have fun. This should not
That's why we play Dungeons and Dragons.
It's
to
not,
have fun.
This game is not... We don't play this game just to suffer through writing a story with each other.
Hey, some people might, but the vast majority of people do not.
Most people just play this game so they can hang out with their friends and escape the real world for a moment.
Dude, real life sucks.
Oh yeah, you can't see me nodding, but I'm nodding.
I want to be a sicko sorcerer.
How great would it be if we could all just turn into our D&D characters?
That would be cool.
So yeah, that's our DM advice. New DMs and old DMs alike. You should use all these things. These are all things that we've learned over our times as DMs. These are tips and tricks that not only we have shared, but other people have shared.
Yep.
And we're not the only DMs out there. So go and listen to other people. Go and see what they have to say. Go and see what tips they have. Whatever clicks with you is what you should use.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for listening to our DM Advice Corner. Now we're just going to go back to the outro. Bye!
Hey!
Wow.
That was it.
That was
the first episode
you know?
of Two Dumb DMs.
I can't believe we only had one incident.
Yeah.
That might have been me like slightly dying.
It was very funny.
I didn't think it was funny.
I thought
was
it was hilarious. I knew you'd be funny. Anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you for listening.
For whoever the heck decides that it's a good idea to listen to this.
Oh my gosh, I hope no one listens
to
this.
You.
This is like sins.
Thank
to all
you
of
very
podcasting.
much for coming and hanging out.
Listening, yeah. We don't have social media things yet.
Where are we posting this?
Well, I don't know.
YouTube, Spotify, iTunes.
Wherever you can get podcasts, I guess.
Hey, we're going to put it everywhere.
It's perfect. But yeah, we don't have social media yet. We'll have those eventually.
That means rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube.
Just give us as much stuff as you can, because we probably
rate us well if you feel like it deserves it.
If you liked us, please do. We'd
appreciate it.
We like people saying nice things to
I need validation.
Please. Well, thanks. And then this is something interesting, but every single end of episode, we're going to have this little blooper from our recording. And so that's coming up right after the outro music.
Yay.
So bye. Thanks for listening. Okay, wait a second, so I can like actually splice in.
You know, I think the skin on your forehead should be called your foreskin.
And that's how we're starting this. Yay!